Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Outer Sounds. I'm here today with Mary Jane Leach, and her record Woodwind Multiples is the selection for Outer Sounds for September. And we're really excited.
Love the cover.
Yeah, beautiful cover, beautiful record. We're excited to have Mary Jane with us today. Um, Former resident of Vermont, now living in Belgrade, and
hmm
nice to see you. How are you doing? How
I'm great. I should say I'm a Vermont native, not just a former
That's right.
resident.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Vermont native, and then you were living upstate New York for a while, for a long time, and then in Vermont.
Yeah. Yeah. I left Vermont like in 1977, so it's been a few years.
Yeah,
Yeah. And used to
that's a
run a
good.
record store around the corner from where you are
Yeah,
and
that's
on
that's
and
so
on
cool.
Church Street in Burlington.
Yeah, well, it's a good place to start. I wanted to just ask you about how you're if you grew up in Vermont and how you got involved with performing and especially composing music. What were kind of some of your
Yeah. Well, I,
early
I, I
moments
hate
with all that?
I hate to say this, but Vermont didn't play much into it because at the
Yeah,
time
yeah,
when I was in high school and young there was nothing going on in Vermont. I mean it was like a cultural wasteland.
yeah. It's a small state. There's not many people here.
Yeah, and it was before that a lot of there was a huge influx of people in the 60s.
Okay.
And before then, it was just people who had like my family moved up in the like 1700s, and then
Hmm.
they just wanted to get out of there. Everybody got out of there. There weren't, people. The population decreased over time,
Yeah,
and there just wasn't anything. I mean, the only thing was like the big cultural events were like high school band concerts and
yeah,
you
yeah.
know high school plays and stuff like that. So really, there wasn't much going on, and even in college, there still wasn't a ton going on.
Did you go to
And
college in Vermont too?
I went to UVM.
UVM.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I actually ran a record store that I began to like learn more, because at
Yeah.
that time, it was difficult because, I mean, things are so easy now. I mean, look, you would like study music, but like a lot of the stuff that you'd be studying, you couldn't hear because it wasn't
Right.
on recording. So you just sort of like were described or imagined what something might sound like. So
Yeah.
I mean, people are it's so much easier now. I mean, it's like in a way it's worse for like composer, so you can get your like $1.30 from Spotify,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's such a different way of engaging with music, right? Having to like really imagine what something sounds like just from a description, and then you know, maybe taking months to find a record or get it or whatever,
Oh,
and
there weren't
finally
records.
hearing it, you're like, oh wow, it's either
But
what you imagined or it's not at all like you
I
imagined.
know. But the thing was that there weren't that many records to,
Yeah,
for music that I was interested in.
yeah,
So I mean that was the other part that was so so difficult. And then of course, that gives you a whole other the whole aspect of not really getting a full idea of the sound. You'd look at the notes on the page, but the notes on the page only give you sort of like a general idea of what things are going to sound like. Because you know something written for flute and or something clarinet, they look the same on the page,
right.
but they don't sound the same at all.
Yeah, the tonal
So
color
well,
is so different, right?
I know it's so amazing. But the thing was I was a theater major in college because I met the head of the department, the music department. I said, I'm out of here. I mean, he was pretty bad. I mean, they actually ended up taking away all of his courses because he had tenure because he was so bad
Yeah, yeah.
that and I think there was some instinct at me that just said, like,
Were
this is
you,
really bad.
yeah, were you playing an instrument or practicing at this
Oh
point,
yeah,
or did you
I'd always played clarinet,
clarinet?
and
Okay.
like and I started studying piano in college.
Yeah.
But I was a theater major. And then when you're a theater major, it's like, oh, you don't know how to, well, of course you know how to weld, you don't know how to write a song. Of course you know how to write a song.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, it's that whole can do kind of attitude.
Right.
And so, and when I did take a course in music theory, and every time we did an exercise, you'd have to write these, exercises to fulfill the
Yeah.
requirements of the whatever. And every time everybody go like, oh wow, that sounds really good. So that kind of got me started.
Yeah,
But
there's
it
the
wasn't,
seed right there.
yeah, so it wasn't until then that I really started. And then when I moved to New York, because there just wasn't anything happening in Vermont. I mean, like bar talk was like avant-garde,
Yeah, I
It's
know.
and now
Hey,
you can go to like concerts of William Byrd, or really
yeah,
specialized classical concerts. But until then, I didn't even know there were composers.
yeah.
I had friends who did a lot of popular music or bluegrass music
Right.
or whatever, like
That's a lot more, common around here, I guess, is, folk music and
I
things like
I
that.
think it still is. I
Yeah.
mean, but anyway, I moved to New York because I wanted to learn more about what I was interested in. I went to Columbia for a year because I figured the only way I could actually make myself move was to like have a goal. And so like
Yeah.
I enrolled in a course and studied there. And
So
it
this was like,
was
what year was this? Did you land in New York?
77.
Okay, late
That was
70s.
a good time to move to New York.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, huh?
Oh, and plus, like you buy a Village Voice to look for an apartment. It's like, there's a category under $200.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's so crazy.
And I remember I was looking for an apartment, and there was like one on West 80th Street, and I decided not to take it because it seemed too kind of creepy,
Yeah.
and now of course, because there was like between Columbus and Broadway, it was sort of no man's land,
Right.
believe it or not, and
Yeah,
now
such a
of course it's really different. You couldn't, I don't know who could afford to get an apartment in that area now.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But
So
anyway, that was really helpful that, I had a goal. I went there. Things were relatively cheap, I mean, I was thinking of all the things I used to do, and I don't think I could afford to do them now.
mhm. Yeah, that was a great time to land there. Did you know of any composers or music before you got there, or did you kind of start meeting people once you got there and just got
No,
just
yeah, no,
interested in different things?
I only met people when I was there. And the first year I was there, it was primarily sort of the more academic concerts that I went to. So like you'd go, I think I went to like 30 concerts, and I could tell you exactly who went to every single concert, because one concert would have like 10 people that were
Yeah,
sort of followed a certain style. Maybe 15 people went to another one. So I mean, it was pretty deadly. And I remember there was a concert at Columbia, and it was like an electronic music concert. And so they started talking about this piece, and I was going, "Oh God, this is going to be really awful." And it turned out to be great. It was oh gosh, I had on the tip of my tongue the Princeton composer who did electronic music. Oh, Paul. Oh,
oh, not
uh,
Paul Lansky.
no, Paul Lenski. Yeah,
Paul Lansky, yeah, 'cause
yeah.
he was in Vermont or he was at Dartmouth for a long time, right? I think
I don't think so. I think he was at Princeton.
Princeton. Okay, yeah,
You're thinking of maybe Charles Dodge, perhaps,
yeah, maybe
or
that's what I'm thinking of.
yeah,
I'm thinking of Larry Polanski. I get those two mixed up.
right, right. Anyway, there wasn't much going on in even once I got there. I mean, it was like a whole other world, and I was happy to be in. I mean, I met Charles Warren the first week I was
Yeah.
there. You know, met a whole a whole bunch of people. And I did my dutiful 12-tone piece.
And were you
Just,
taking like a music class of some sort
I
or
was taking a
composition?
composition course.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so it was a good it's a way to get there.
Yeah.
And then after the first year, I decided, I don't know, I think I've heard everything that I want to hear,
Yeah.
and so then I just started hanging out more with like performance art people. And oh, well, meanwhile, I also had been working off Broadway during that time.
Okay.
So
So
I
still
was doing
involved.
lighting and stuff. Yeah. Um, so there was that. And so then I just got kind of hooked up with, through friends of friends, got hooked up with this whole performance art scene. And I originally, it was more of the two kinds of performance art. One is like visually oriented, and the other is
Mhm.
theatrically
Yeah.
oriented. And so I was hanging out with more visually oriented performance artists. And that kind of got frustrated because I was a performer,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
and it just, I mean, I have nothing against it, but it wasn't for me. So then I started hanging out more with the music side of things in the downtown side. And,
Yeah.
you just, everybody meets
Yeah.
everybody.
You find your people, right?
Well, also at that time, there weren't such stark divisions between.
Right.
I mean, there was a
Yeah.
difference between uptown and downtown,
Yeah.
but in sort of the more downtown experimental, you'd hang out with dancers, you'd hang out with painters, you'd hang out with sculptors. Like there was sort of a more of an intermingling
Yeah.
of the arts, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. And
So,
even within the like, experimental music, there were, obviously you think about somebody like Arthur Russell who was doing like dance music and then, you
although
know,
when I knew Arthur, I didn't realize was doing
yeah,
that. I
maybe
only
that he
knew
was just doing that on
playing
his
his
own.
cello.
Yeah.
I just
It's crazy. He was like, kind of working with this label called Sleeping Bag Records, which was doing like kind of early dance music and hip hop and stuff. So it's so fascinating that, some of, and then rock music or guitars coming into, that world too and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And the first, well, one of the performance spaces the one that I hung out the most with initially was a place called A's.
Okay.
And so, I mean, the first time I heard Glenn Branca was there, and he was playing the anvil with a sledgehammer.
Oh yeah. That's great. Just like just pounding it over and over again.
And Alan Vega,
Yeah.
Suicide, was like playing with the microphone and bashing it into his face. And
Oh
I
man.
mean,
So great.
yeah, it really was.
I love all that stuff. Um, yeah, so then, you're getting kind of connected with this, downtown scene and did you start,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, what happened was
composing
like,
more, performing more?
yeah, I mean, one of these things, so like, especially with sort of non-traditional song forms or instrumental forms, one thing you do is like every once in a while, everybody says, "Well, let's form a group, and we'll play each other's music and
Yeah.
that kind of thing." And I was in a couple of groups like that, and one of them was oh, it was just the weirdest thing. I mean, there was like an alto flute that was like sort of non-standard tuning, and
Hmm.
people playing recorders. I mean, nothing. Nothing really was in tune with each other. And
Yeah.
and someone had lent me a bass clarinet, and I
Mm.
fell in love with the sound.
Oh, incredible sound.
And I thought, wow, well, what one of the best things of when I started, we did a concert on the Staten Island Ferry. So I was standing in the front going, whoa,
Aw.
whoa. It was really great.
People are like
And
looking at you like, what's going on here?
not really, because there was a whole bunch of us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
everybody liked it as much as I did, you know.
Yeah.
So but one of the things was I decided like we obviously had had intonation problems when you're working with all these non-standard instruments. And
Yeah.
so I thought, well, I want to make sure that I'm not playing out of tune. So I thought, well, I had a cassette player. I thought I can sing a note without any vibrato and just stay on pitch, and then I'll play it back with my bass clarinet and see what happens. So, I started doing that, and I'll, if I got a little bit out of tune, I'd go like,
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, did I just like ruin my speakers? But I realized, I learned that I hadn't ruined my speakers, and began to, play around with shaping the sound phenomena and stuff that were happening. And so
Yeah.
that was really the beginning of the rest of my compositional life. Because I had tried all these different forms and experimented, but I was lucky that I found something that kind of spoke to me.
Yeah.
Not everybody finds something that speaks to them, that they can build on. So
yeah.
Anyway, that was how it all happened.
I like that. I like that as like kind of a seed or a jumping off point to like explore and start writing works, based on, different tones or different,
Yeah, and I started out just by writing for pieces that I could, for instruments that I could play. So bass clarinet was one. So that was how my piece for 4 bass clarinets came about. And then for voice, I was doing pieces for voice because I could sing. And then gradually, I expanded according to the tape machines that I had access to, so, I had like a 2-track and then a 4-track and then an 8-track.
So you could just go ahead and layer and overdub, playing, all the different parts.
See what happens. So, like, for instance, the bass clarinet piece, I'd go like, well, what do 4 unisons sound like?
Yeah.
Okay, well, now what do 3 unisons and octaves sound like? Okay, so 2 unisons. I was pretty obsessive about it, but the thing is that I really sort of got in my bones what would happen,
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing you can only learn by experiencing. You can't, you could look at something and say, oh, I see the fingerings for playing a C scale on a piano, but you need the physical aspect of it. It's not something you can just read about and, you have to, it's like hands-on. You have to be hands-on for certain kinds of learning experiences. And as with like playing, scales, it becomes sort of ingrained in you. And so, the sound phenomena became ingrained. So, and then when I would get certain sound phenomena happening, I would notate that and then see what happened next. And so like all kinds of interesting things would start happening. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then I wrote a piece for alto, flute, and voice. And alto, flute, and voice sound almost exactly alike.
Yeah.
And it's disorienting because I couldn't pick out my voice. I could only, when I listen to a recording, I could only tell if I was playing by the entrance, because you have a kind of a more of a breathy entrance with a flute, whereas I would just go just sort of glottis out, or maybe just like ease into it a little bit more than that. But, it wasn't noticeable, whereas the flute was noticeable. And then once I got into computers, I could start multi-tracking things with instruments that I didn't play, so like bassoon was the next one. And, I sort of came up with a sound that sounded like bassoon on my little Casio player.
So the electronically generated sound or whatever, and then
just to figure out what was happening.
What it sounded like.
I never actually used those sounds, in a performance.
Out for the actual.
We'd go and the interesting thing was made 2 recordings of it, and I wrote it for Shannon P. And we had I I finished the piece, and then we were recording it like 2 hours later. And so usually what I had learned that you tape the lowest note first, or the note that is like the prevalent note.
Mm-hmm.
And so but Shannon said, I can't do that. I'm going to blow my lip out if I don't do that. So we started with the octave, tuned to that. But thank God for Jim Tenney, because he
Yeah.
heard the piece and he goes, Shannon, it's out of tune. And of course, no one else would know,
Yeah,
but
you're
I had to take someone with ears like Jim Tenney to know that it was out of tune. So we re-recorded it, and I'm happy we did.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess what you're talking about right now, I'm reminded of Phil Niblock's work, and I know that you kind of worked with him, or you had a couple releases on his label, and he did a lot.
I ran the label.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And he was doing all those pieces with taking one instrument and then piling it up into these massive drone pieces.
Well, the interesting thing, that the difference between Phil's music and mine was that he would record things and then he would cut off the entrances.
Right.
Just and so and I kept the I keep the entrances because to me it just makes it more organic in a way.
Yeah. You can hear more of the gesture of the player versus just the pure tone or whatever.
Instead of just like, it's like, getting out your pacifiers so you don't like grind your teeth too much. Yeah, that's the main difference. The reason, okay, I knew I was forgetting something. The reason I got so interested in the breath as sort of a continuing factor in playing was that I had written this piece for two taped voices coming out of separate speakers, and then a live voice which roamed between the speakers and played. You can play with the sound, and whoever could have intercept the sound waves and affect them in a certain way. But when I went in to record the first two parts, I had written it so that I held a certain note for like 3 minutes. And it didn't occur to me that I couldn't sing a note for 3 minutes without breathing.
How did that happen?
Yeah, what a concept. But anyway, that really, I ever since then, I've sort of organized my pieces around the breath.
Yeah.
And so I mean, the difference between like Phil and me is that he cut them out, and
he removes the breath. Yeah. So it's just
and I went with
tones.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so you're keeping the natural, length of the breath. And
although what's interesting, the piece of mine, Trio for Duo, that's on Flute Songs, has there are only ever 3 parts at one time. So like when one part is ending a note, another part picks up right from where that note ended.
Yeah.
And that's a way to keep things go so that the sound phenomena don't drop out.
Right.
But with my piece for bass flute that's on my new album, it was originally written in 1985, and it was for alto flute, clarinet, bass oboe, and then changed to English horn, and then voice, and which is like such an impractical.
Yeah, we're gonna find that ensemble to play.
Right. So and it was sort of using the same concept as Trio for Duo, but what I did was that with the ending phrase, I extended it by like a note, by 1 beat, so that so it's even more seamless. So it's more of a kind of a swirling kind of thing happening.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to find that piece, because I totally forgotten about it, and I was like, oh, well, I'll just put this in my computer, so I have it for the future, not thinking or even knowing whether I'd like the piece or not. And then I heard it and go, oh, that sounds pretty good. I bet it would, I bet it would sound good with like, just, like all of one instrument and,
Yeah.
so.
So you just rescored it for the bass
Yeah.
flute. Yeah.
Well, actually I have several reorchestrations. I have one for like oboe, one for
Oh,
clarinet,
nice.
one for bassoon, and they're all like written to fit their the sweet sounds of
Yeah. Yeah.
the most resonant sound, fundamentals of that of an instrument. So, but it was interesting to get back to that because I hadn't written anything like that in a really long time, because I branched off so that instead of having, one of the things is like trio for duo doesn't really work in performance because the live and the tape sounds never quite mesh, so you don't get that kind of homogeneity of sound.
And it
So
would it be hard to get, instead of using a taped background to get, whatever it would be, the right number of performers to do it live?
I guess you could. I guess you could. I just never, I hadn't even thought of that.
A little more, probably, yeah,
All
obviously
live.
more of a production, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think on flute songs, I think is trio for duo on that.
I think so. Let me see.
I think so.
Um, let's see how well I know my record collection here. Here we go. That's flute song.
Another beautiful cover.
Yeah, I love these records are nice. Yeah, we've got
I'm pretty sure. Well, even if it's not on there, it's been re-recorded for like
Trio for Duo is the first.
All alto flutes.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. Manuel is like the dream performer, like because he's just so open and he knows exactly what to do and he does it exactly the way you want it to do without even telling him.
Right. That's so huge, right? Finding somebody like that.
Oh my God. He had contacted me over a period of years, and then he had this one project he was doing, which was being inspired by John Dowland. And I used to work at the Shakespeare Festival at UVM in the summertime. And for incidental music, we had these John Dowland records, and I just fell in love with his music. So, for me, it was kind of like a gateway composer. And so he said, well, do you want to? I said, yes, I want to. I'll write something because, it just sounded like the right thing to do. And I wrote it pretty quickly for me because I'm like a really, really slow writer.
Okay.
And so I sent it to Manuel, and I didn't hear from him for a couple of days. I'm going like, he's probably trying to figure out how to tell me he doesn't like it.
Yeah, just busy maybe.
Yeah. So about 3 days later, I get this email that says, I love the piece. I've recorded it. I made a video, and I'm performing it 3 times next month.
Amazing. Yeah, that's amazing.
Because I thought I'd have to coach him through the recording because, I mean, there's a certain technique for, these kinds of pieces. And the thing is to do these subtle entries so that you have like some kind of pulse that keeps going rather than just being a mush,
Yeah.
I didn't have to tell him anything, I mean, he just.
That's great. That's so great. Yeah, I mean, and
the fact that he has his own studio.
Yeah. Yeah, and the performances on both these records are just beautiful and they sound great. And
aren't they?
Yeah. So yeah, let's see. You were in New York for how long then? And then you moved upstate, right?
Mm-hmm. I was in New York for about, I don't know, 25 years.
Okay.
Does that sound right? 23, maybe 30 years, almost 30 years.
Okay.
And then I moved upstate, and I bought this church, which had great acoustics, but it was like, had all these hidden things that were wrong with it. It just began falling apart. it flooded all the time. It was just, you see like a frog swimming in your living room.
Yeah, it's country living, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and the area, I mean, it's probably even worse for music than, like, say, the whole Burlington area.
Hmm.
It's kind of very traditional. There's not much contemporary music going on, and what contemporary music is going on is, you know, I'm not that interested in.
Right,
So,
right.
I mean, that's one reason I'm over here in Europe is that I'm more of my friends are here, and more of
Yeah,
my aesthetic friends are here, and more of
right.
my work is here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so
holding out as long.
you moved to Belgrade when, like, was it
two
3
years
years?
ago.
2 years
No,
ago, yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why'd you choose Belgrade? Just was a place you wanted
Well, I
to
was originally going to go to Berlin,
Yeah.
but the person I was going to originally stay with died.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
because it was all during the. Well, he didn't die of COVID, but he
But
died
yeah.
of this weird condition where his frontal lobe just disintegrated.
Oh, it's terrible.
Or yeah, it is. And then, it was difficult to get into some countries, and Serbia was a country that we, was easy to get into.
Hmm.
So I mean, and I just had to get out of the States.
Yeah.
I was just ready. So, and I knew if I didn't do it then, I would never do it. So that was
Right.
why I came here,
Yeah.
and it worked out. And I love living here.
Yeah. Do you feel like
Even though there were times where,
you're
you know that it, that are frustrating, because some things are more difficult than other things,
Yeah. Yeah.
but then some other things are easier than in other places. So but just, yeah. And the rules change weekly. So.
Yeah. There's always trade-offs, right? It's like,
Yeah,
pick up some good things and
yeah,
some bad things. Do you
yeah,
feel like
yeah.
you're more connected with like the kind of European, new music scene or whatever you want to call it now that you're over there in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I always was,
Yeah.
actually.
You're a
Especially
little bit
especially in
closer.
Berlin, where I have almost too many friends there. Because
Yeah.
if I moved there, it might be tempting to just do things all the time.
You can still, you're still not too far away, relatively speaking.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
Well, that's great. The one thing, like we talked a little bit about, how the first piece on this record came together. Um, we were talking off air. How did you link up with Modern Love? Because I think it's very interesting. Because, like, at least as a record store owner and a music fan, when I hear about Modern Love, I think of Andy Stott's music. You know his music,
yeah, yeah,
which is fantastic, but it's more in the, like, dance music realm or whatever. So especially when the flute songs came out, I was like, whoa, that's great. I'm glad they're doing this kind of music too.
I think I might have. Well, Lucy Railton has an album on
That's right.
Modern
She has
Love,
something too.
and
Yeah.
I knew Lucy because she organized a concert of mine at Cafe Otto in
Oh,
London.
great. Yeah, yeah. It's a great spot.
I know, I love that place.
Hmm.
So I don't know if it was through her. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I mean, he's great. I mean, I actually get paid.
Yeah, that's fun. That's great.
And he's like so supportive, and he's so enthusiastic, and
Hmm.
it brought a whole new crowd of people listening to my music, that and I didn't realize that until I had a concert in Paris, and that was when it's like, oh yeah, there's all these like younger people who just really love your music. And there was a concert, and they went to hear my music instead of Julius Eastman's music.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I mean,
So it works for me.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a great outlet, and it's nice. Like I said, it's sort of like it is bringing the kind of music that you do to to a different audience, you know, and that's kind of how
Hmm.
it is for. I feel like whenever you put out a record on whatever record label, all pretty much all labels have their own like little following, you know, and it might be a different group of people,
Hmm.
or there might be like an overlap, you know, with some other people. But I think that's just kind of how it goes nowadays, you know. It's just like
Yeah.
these little
Well, it helps because
hits.
like my piece album that came out on Bloom,
Yeah, Pipe Dreams.
Pipe Dreams,
Yeah,
that really started a lot of things. And I think that what really helps is that both Bloom and Modern Love are also distributors.
right. Yeah, Sound Dome and Boomcat, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah, and I think
they
that
have
really
great.
helps because they have really good connections.
Yeah, and they're both great, have great catalogs and really
And they're the sweetest
established in Europe.
people, it's like,
Yeah,
I've been in the, I was in the record business a lot. And, there were some people, I mean, like Chuck Nessa has been a friend of mine for over 50 years. And there are people like that. And then there are like real creeps too.
yeah. Oh yeah, there's always you get the whole gamut, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. I for my record shop, I order stuff from Boomcat and Soundome, you know, things that I just can't get in the United States. I have to get directly from them and basically, you know, import it to my shop, you know, that aren't things
Yeah.
those things aren't distributed here. But the
You can't get them through forced exposure.
this record, yeah, these are through Force Exposure, and so is the Bloom stuff too. So, but some of the other, there's some other things that you know are just harder to get over here. But I
Yeah.
got all these through Force Exposure, and that they're great. They're
Yeah, I worked with them when I ran XI.
yeah,
They were nice
yeah.
people.
I get stuff from them all the time, and it's pretty close by. So it's I get them like the next day or whatever. So
They're in Massachusetts, aren't they?
yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, What's what have you been working on since you've moved to Belgrade? What are some of your new projects, and do you have concerts coming up or what's going on?
I do, but I actually one thing that happened was that I gave a concert in Ghent a couple
Mhm.
months ago, and I actually made a new piece for organ,
Okay.
um, with not enough time, but okay. Because
Yeah.
the way I write, for anything is I just go through all the permutations of what happens, and you just get sometimes surprising things happen. Like
Right.
for instance, like Dreams, it sounded like it was like um marimbas
Right.
play. They were like kind of these wood blocky type sounds,
Hmm.
and the organ that piece was played on, you would play a note and it would play that note plus a ninth higher, which is like a dissonant interval.
Yeah.
So of course, I go, yeah, let's
Cool.
play,
Yeah.
like two minor seconds together and get like a really, happening. But one of the bad things about COVID was that I had this really good gig lined up at the Vienna Festfolk, which is the Vienna Fest um, music festival,
Okay.
and they were commissioning me to write a piece for organ,
Oh, okay.
and so I was going, why didn't I think of that sooner? Because I because when I wrote the piece or created the piece when I was living in Cologne, I was living right where the organ was, and
Yeah.
so I had this idea, oh hell, I have to live where the organ is, and oh,
Yeah.
how sometimes you just get stuck in thinking something and
Right.
you just it's hard to like get out of that rut. So my goal is to find a bunch of number of organs around Europe where I can like hang out for a month or so
Yeah.
and just really like exploit the sounds that are available on that organ,
Have you
so
do you know Callie Malone's work at all? She's a younger musician and composer. Do you know her?
is she an organist?
Yeah, she does a lot of organ pieces and like site-specific organ pieces. She's somebody that would be great for you to
I
connect with.
might have met. Does she live in the Burlington area?
No, Callie lives in I think she lives in Stockholm maybe or somewhere in
Oh,
Scandinavia. Um, but
because I. And what's
she would
really
be
funny
great to
because
talk to because she a lot of what she does is she'll go to specific she's done a lot in Europe, specific
yeah,
churches, organs, and
yeah.
plays her pieces on them.
There are a
And
number of people like that. There's like Ellen Arkbro
yeah, Ellen's another one too. And I
and
think from that.
Hennix, CC
Yeah.
Hennix.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Yeah, so we're all kind of like in this like
yeah. But I feel
connect
like
me
you
to
could
the
be like the
organ.
organ, you could connect with them and they could, kind of get you
I
the
know.
the
Well,
contacts
it's
that you
funny
need.
because last week I said, and I made a Facebook post saying like there should be an enlightened producer that will like book, our bro and Nix and me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. It'll happen. It'll
But there,
happen.
but there was also when I met you. Did I meet you in your store a few
Yeah.
years ago?
Yeah, I think a couple different
Just,
times you came by.
just before I got there, I met up with some young woman who was an organist, and she bought
Oh,
my
okay.
organs. That was why I asked where she was
Okay.
living.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, yeah, check out Callie's work. It's fantastic and I think you'll find some resonance there and um she's kind of a, exciting like young musician and composer.
yeah, yeah, because it's different. I mean, Charlemagne Palestine, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, but he's more of the like just like full steam
Attack the
ahead. I
yeah,
mean,
attack
he does.
it.
I don't think he does subtle.
No, he has his own thing and it's so great.
Yeah, yeah. He used to let me play his when he lived in New York. He used to let me play his Bosendorfer.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So and he gave a I did a concert in Antwerp, and he had done a concert in Antwerp, and he still had all his like stuffed toys.
Yeah. I love that. He brings that whole entourage of stuffed animals with
I
him
know,
on shows and
I know. He used to
creates
like
an
just like smoke
environment.
cigarettes and drink brandy, and
Yeah.
have these like young women like replenishing the brandy and
Yeah, gotta
giving
have
him
a
the
bottle
next
of cognac
cigarette.
at every show. Yeah, he's
probably
amazing. And,
probably in the rider.
oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah, it has to be at this point. Um, that's great.
So have I answered all the questions you might want
Yeah,
an
I
answer
mean,
to?
so basically, what's next for you is you're trying to work on some more pieces, and you have anything else going on that's coming up?
Well, I have a piece for Woodwind Octet,
Okay.
which is gonna which was supposed to be out like a year or so ago, but because there were 8 players, it kept being like one person would be sick.
Oh yeah,
I mean, this COVID is still kind of,
yeah. Still
you
lingering
know,
under affecting some.
one the best thing that happened with COVID was Manuel, the flute player, and his wife were going on vacation, and the day before they were leaving, she tested positive for COVID, so they couldn't go. But then it was just when I had just sent him
oh yeah,
the piece for Facebook, so all of a sudden he had all this time that he didn't have
yeah,
anything scheduled. So
yeah. So he just dove right into it. He was like, okay, I got some.
yeah, so I mean, it worked out for me.
Yeah. So
But
that
yeah,
the octet piece, you're still waiting for it to be recorded or something like that, or
no, it finally got recorded, but then it got really delayed, and the sound engineer was being a pain in the butt, and
oh, okay.
I finally had a friend of mine who lives in Antwerp who produces a lot of concerts. I said, call them up and let the guy know that these just aren't these like silly little women, that you've got like a music community behind you, and
Right.
things did get worked out. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
because it was all, the pieces, the whole album is all pieces by women composers.
Oh, okay. So it's like a compilation album
Yeah, yeah,
sorts.
which I'm
Yeah.
not crazy about compilations, because
Yeah.
things never, you know, get noticed.
Yeah, they can,
I
they're
mean,
really hard
I
to
don't
pull
buy
off.
compilate. Yeah, because you don't. I mean, do you put like one in every bin?
I know, right? Where do you put it?
Yeah, yeah. It's really difficult. So anyway, and I had a choral piece come out by this really great chorus out of Philadelphia.
Hmm.
Um, and so just little odds and ends. I'd like to write a piece for two bass clarinets,
Hmm.
which I actually just started, because
Nice.
then Sam, the um, clarinetist on the new album,
Yeah.
um, is is a has a duo with another woman who's also plays bass clarinet.
Okay.
So
Nice.
that could be nice.
Yeah. I mean, that's going back to your, original bass clarinet.
Yeah,
It's
I know,
that's
and I
deep,
always feel
deep
like
down in
the
there for you.
title 4BC always sounds so primordial anyway. It's
Yeah.
like,
Or BC with the dots.
well,
Um,
that's how yeah, the, the title just came out because it used to be, back in the days when scores were all handwritten. I just would put 4BC and the date so that I could keep track of,
yeah.
the latest version of something. And so then finally it'd been up there so long, I go, oh, 4BC, okay. It named itself.
Yeah, that's great. Sometimes you just leave it. It's whatever placeholder. You're just like, oh, that's good. I like that title.
Titles are the hardest part.
Yeah, I know.
Because I mean, you want something that is like woodwind multiples isn't very interesting, but you also don't want something that's so like arcane that no one knows what it's talking about, or ends up being so silly or so time sensitive
Right. Becomes
that
dated or something.
every time you hear the title, you just go like,
Yeah. Yeah, I like titles that are like simple but maybe suggestive a little bit, like gives you a little room to imagine, something, but
yeah. I always like or wordplay.
yeah, that too. Yeah, that's
Like
fun.
almost all my titles are word plays on things.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you don't know it, but
Yeah,
it's that little extra.
something fun. Yeah.
Monteverde, Vermont, Green Mountains. you know?
There we go. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I
So
think that about does it. And I'm it's great to talk to you. I'm glad we got a chance to chat here.
yeah.
Um, I just sent out the record to the subscribers this week,
Oh
so
wow.
I think
But you
60.
have like sort of a
Yeah, it's a
subscribers.
monthly like subscription service basically where I send
So it's
out.
like kind of a curated
Yeah, I pick one record
list,
every
kind of
month and send it out to the subscribers, and there's probably about 65 people, so
that many.
65 people are
Wow.
about to get this record and
Well,
listen
I
to it.
told Sean that that you were doing it, so
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
it was
he's
funny
figured
because
that out by now.
yeah, I was actually in touch with Shalom like a couple weeks ago because I was trying to get some stuff from Boomcat, so I'll send him another note soon and tell him I got these from Force Exposure and stuff. So, um, but yeah,
Yeah,
great
that's great.
great record and happy to get it out to some new ears, and I think people are gonna dig it. So, yeah,
Yay. Well,
right.
thank you.
Well, great
So
talking
I'm
with you,
gonna,
Mary Jane. Thanks for your time, and keep in touch. Let me know what's going on. Always
I
excited to hear
will.
more of your music.
Nothing better than having someone being interested in your music.
Yeah,
It's like, everything a composer wants to hear.
yeah, that's great. And
Yeah. So
we all
thank you
gotta.
so much.
Yeah, thank you, and
Okay.
take care. And we'll talk to you soon.
Auf Wiedersehen.
All right, bye bye.